Hello, we're here to talk about an app store. You're probably familiar with the App Store on your mobile phone, but this one is rather different. HP has launched a store for applications that control software-defined networks in data centers. It's an SDN App Store. So we're going to be talking to some industry analysts to discuss the significance of this move. But first, let's hear from HP. What's it all about?
Well, I think there's a fundamental shift happening within networking right now, and software-defined networking has kind of been at the forefront of it. But for the past several years, all we've been talking about is technology and really building that foundation, but we have yet to go to market with solutions. So the SDN App Store is really that vehicle to bring new innovative solutions out to the market that is not just delivered through a set of APIs, but is an entire infrastructure from those initial APIs and bringing the applications, the ecosystem, all the way to a go-to-market with channel and sales involved.
So who's going to be using the App Store?
A lot of the customers are enterprise customers. They actually aren't quite the bleeding edge. The bleeding edge have actually been rolling their own SDN. They have teams of developers developing on it already. But really the core enterprise is looking for a solution to a problem. So anywhere from some of our customers like Bama Foods, who's just a frozen dough manufacturer, I mean, albeit one of the world's largest, to some of the world's largest chain restaurants, but not inherently a high-tech company. So someone like that, all the way to service providers. So really someone looking at solving unique solutions with SDN.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, so I think we see three different places where SDN is solving real customer problems today. The first is in security. So example of our Network Protector SDN application that HP actually put out that is securing bring your own device and looking at new ways, reimagining security. So taking things like malware detection, which has been there for a while, reimagining it with SDN and being able to put real-time policies at the very edge. Or another example would be Guardicore in security, where they actually take a look at security in the data center. And once an intruder's got in, it's really hard in the data center to figure out where you're vulnerable or not. So they're looking at new ways with an active honeypot and using SDN there. The other two areas are cloud. I think customers are looking at the cloud and saying, how do I use the cloud? Not necessarily how I build it anymore. How do I take best advantage of it and move to this kind of new self-service IT model? So a lot of unique innovations there. And then finally, mobility. So HP is one of the only companies talking actually about how we use SDN in the campus and branch, and to the new iPhone, which actually supports 802.11 AC, next wave of wireless technologies, really new user experiences there.
But the big difference between HP's App Store and those of the mobile phone vendors, such as Apple and Google, is that HP doesn't have control over the apps. Or does it?
One of our analyst friends brought up a good analogy of, we want to make it as integrated and seamless as it is to download Angry Birds is to your favorite smart device, but we don't want to let those angry packets loose out on the network. So we created these categories. We wanted to inherently make the App Store open. So we do have this kind of idea of community applications where it's just open access. We wanted to take the idea that of the HP garage, where Bill and Dave founded HP some 75 years ago. We actually have our 75th anniversary going on right now, and bring that to networking. Networking has long been this really stagnant in terms of innovation, where there's really a high barrier for entry to innovate. So we wanted to make sure that was there, but at the same time, we wanted to make it enterprise ready. So we actually shepherd the process along the way and create different categories such as partner applications, where there's some more certification or really testing that's taking place, so that they actually go through a set of testing methodology. And we don't actually leave the burden on them as well, because networking gear is inherently still expensive. And if you wanted to build topologies to test on, it's going to cost several hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the barrier of entry is still extremely high. So what we did is create remote labs for the developers to actually log in and test on real gear. So we do actually take really great care in making sure that there's enterprise class applications in this App Store.
So HP may be first to market now, but I wondered how long it was going to be alone in that market.
I mean, right now we're the only ones in the market that has even remotely discussed an App Store and that deployment model. Some of the other vendors are focused on just APIs or closed vendor-centric communities. So I think as long as we keep it open, which is our plan, an example is NEC, who is one of our partners in our ecosystem, who is building applications on their own controller. And they're also bringing applications into our App Store ecosystem. I think the goal is to focus our energy on building something that is enterprise ready, but also is the center of innovation for SDN. It's not just tied to our hardware, but any open hardware out there. And it's really an open ecosystem for that innovation to happen.
Time to hear from the analysts. What do they make of HP's move?
HP has been a pioneer in trying to bring SDN to the mainstream enterprise. And the App Store is a part of that effort. Now, how important it is actually best understood in looking at what are the real use cases for SDN in the enterprise. And it all comes down to the application in the end. Now, SDN applications as a concept are somewhat novel to the networking in general. Now, what HP is doing is trying to certify and bring those applications closer to their users, which is the right thing to do if your objective is to actually bring SDN to the mainstream enterprise. So it is an important move. It is a right move to make in HP's position. Are the other companies going to follow suit? Remains to be seen, because HP is in a very particular position in the marketplace. It is the biggest of Cisco's challengers in switching, and it is probably the biggest company that's actually putting its weight behind SDN in the switching market. So it means that it's natural for them to be a leader in this space. The others, the competitors that are bigger, like Cisco, are not so invested into SDN as HP is, so they are probably not likely to follow suit, maybe something similar focused on their ACI. But on the other hand, the smaller vendors in the switching market are not as big as HP to actually be able to deploy this with some kind of efficiency. So it is going to remain probably unique in the marketplace for some time. But the other vendors are going to introduce applications one way or the other pretty soon, if they are not already doing it.
And how do you see market reception of the App Store?
The mainstream enterprise will probably require something like this to adopt those applications in the first wave. Probably in the second wave, or as we go along the SDN journey, there is going to be more, let's say, direct adoption of those applications from third parties. But in this initial stage, it is very beneficial. It's probably going to be received quite well.
And what do they expect market reception to be?
The SDN App Store, I think, is the established hardware vendors' response, quite intelligent response, to the standardization of the hardware. Now, if you're going to compete with white boxes at half the price, the added value you provide is the solutions. So the SDN App Store is really a way of leading by software selling, which I think is a first in HP. They're very careful about the fact that the SDN apps in the store actually also include Microsoft links. So it's not like they're cutting out their software vendors. They have met initially pushback from the channels, but I think the channels are now embracing it, understanding that if you're going to sell a more expensive HP box, you got to do it on the back of it actually delivers services faster. So I think it's a smart move. The way HP have framed their app store, they only have 9 apps in there, so we're not in the millions of Apple Store. But the way they've framed it is they have 4 tiers. So they have a community tier at the bottom, which is basically like Apple. You know, they'll vet it for malware, but that's about it. No guarantees or anything. And then on the next level, they have partnering, which means they've actually looked at the product. It looks interesting. They've provided resources, and I think this is a very important part of it. If you are a major company looking to shift to IBM or a telco, whatever, and you go to the HP SDN store and you see an app from a startup, not many telcos are buying startup apps, but HP is then saying, well, we've looked at it, we think it's sensible, and actually you can test out this app in our lab online. So it's like virtual lab service, lab as a service, basically. So this is the second level, and so 6 of their 9 apps are in the first in the community, 3 in the second, the partner. Then they have a premier tier with nobody in it right now, but that's where they want to move the apps, where they will actively sell it through their own sales force. They'll commission and they'll reward sales for it. And then the final is an HP app, which I presume they'll buy the company. But yeah, I think this is an interesting move.
What do you expect take-up to be?
I think it expands and solidifies to a certain degree the SDN architecture. I think it's interesting with my security focus that 2 of these apps are actually security apps. So that kind of mirrors the concerns that any cloud adopter would have. So I think this is something that keeps HP on top of mind of their customers. It certainly is a dialogue enabler, I think, for HP, but slow initially.
Will other vendors follow HP's move?
I think so. Certainly in the high-end markets, Cisco I mean, has a lot of the same kinds of things. And even if you go to a cloud provider like Amazon, which arguably is a price leader, they have an app store for apps that fit into the AWS scheme. So I think a lot of providers, both in the hardware and software side, will be rolling out these app store type of concepts.
So it looks like the App Store will be a viable model for HP and future vendors. It only remains to hand the final word to HP's Jacob Rapp to give us his vision of the SDN App Store's future.
I think within this next year is a lot more solutions. We spent over 5,000 man hours in certification process and really kind of curating the applications that are going to be available today. So with that, we came out with 6 partner applications and 2 HP applications. But we have a backlog of about 30 developers that are anxiously waiting to get their applications in our App Store. So the next year, I think we're going to see a huge growth in the amount of solutions that are available out on the market and broad adoption.